a Fanboys Inc. production.
Can you dig it, nigga, sucker? Ooh, yeah! We boo you because you're both a couple of world-class international a-holes. Time to play the game.
What are you doing?
I don't know. I XO. I haven't seen you. Oh, wait. I'm not blowing kisses to you. I just was giving you a little hint that tonight we've got a guest who's been all over the world of pro wrestling, and I know you're excited to talk to her. Tonight we have Delmi Exo as our special guest.
And there she is. Thank you. Thank you
Hello,
for being
thank
here.
you for having me.
That's all. Are you at a bar or is that your house?
This is my living room setup. So half of the living room is like a normal setup, and then the rest of it is this. And I kind of like just sitting at the bar, like behind the bar.
All right. I just wanted to ask you that. You already told me that, but that way we can let our audience know.
Yeah, let
it's
them
her
know that
house.
I'm not just crashing at some random.
And we got Chris is coming in saying hi. Hi, Chris. How you doing? And Chris says hi to you, Delmi. Look at that. So, Jack,
Chris
it's
is
your
a-
show. You go. Go.
Yeah,
I'm
Chris
just
is
here.
a big fan. Chris, I just saw Chris at a show earlier last month, so I'm glad that you're here, Chris. I know a bunch of our other listeners are excited that you're here tonight, and I think it's interesting because we've been really fortunate. We've had some amazing talent on this podcast for the last 2 years, but I'm not sure we've had anyone who's got quite the resume that you've accumulated in such a short period of time. So stop me if I'm wrong, but as a professional, you're 6 years in. Is that accurate?
I am now, I guess, like with training, 9 years in. So from the day I started training, I am now 9 years into wrestling.
Where did
What
you
got
train?
you-
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Lewis.
No, I was. What got you involved in pro wrestling? What? How did the bug bite you?
What ruined my life? Well, I was a fan growing up as a younger kid. Me and Ashley and my sister would watch it a lot, and it was just something that was always on TV with my dad. And then as I was entering senior year, Ashley really wanted to get into training, and so she brought me along, and I just signed up the day that she signed up. So it's kind of how it all happened.
And were you guys raised in Providence, Rhode Island? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, I'm originally from Providence, Rhode Island. I am now living in East Hampton, Massachusetts with Rip Bison. And yeah, I love
I know
New
that
England.
guy.
I love the New England area. So I don't think I would ever leave New England, but I just went from Rhode Island to Massachusetts, and that was big enough of a move for me.
Wait a minute. If I gotta look down here because you're down here. If you live with Rip, Jack, are you stalking her too?
Tell me, I mean, you got a cool neighbor down the road. I hear there's an artist who lives down the road from you. Louis is pointing that out.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because I walk by. I just kind of walk through the neighborhood if I have to take a bus somewhere sometimes, and I'm always like, "I wonder if Jack's in his house at this point."
You can always tell because there's a car with a Hello Kitty Batman amalgam on the back of my car, so you can always tell. You see the Hello Kitty and Batman, you know I'm around.
No.
Right on. Well, so I used to live in Bristol, which isn't too far from Providence, Rhode Island. So I feel like, we kind of got some of our geographical homes sort of in common. We're not far off in Rhode Island, and we're only yards away in East Hampton. And I guess the other question that we're going to get more into later, but Pro Wrestling Grind, which of course some of us are wearing the cool shirt tonight, Lewis.
I don't have one.
Well,
I have to trade him an Angrygeeks shirt for one.
Yeah, show up.
Yeah, show up.
Oh, I will be there. I was just telling Jack, I promise you guys I will be at the next show. I really do. It was just unfortunate.
Hold out your pinky.
Unfortunate. Pinky.
Pinky promise.
Okay. It was just unfortunate events. I got sick and bad weather. It was just but I swear the next one on the 29th I will be there. I promise.
All right, got you on camera.
Rip, yes, I told Rip, I'll even bring the big TV camera too if you guys want. I told Rip I will be there. I promise. On the 29th I will be there. Go ahead, Jack. I already said my I pledge to everyone I will be there. The whole grind. I will be there.
All right. So Delmi, I should prepare you that at some point Lewis is going to offer to be your manager. So I don't know if it's going to happen tonight or if it's going to happen on the 29th, but be prepared. If you want to let him down easy, just know that question's coming up.
All right. I'll start writing it out now.
The contract? Sure. I already got one. You don't have to worry about it. Contract is already written. Don't you worry about a thing.
If you have a little whiskey, I bet you it'll help fuel a good line. Like, break open some, I don't know, maybe some Jameson, maybe some Gentleman Jack, something like that. It's going to come to you like that. Right,
we
Lewis?
got a comment.
Chris says, miss seeing you at shows, Delmi. Was just thinking about seeing you and Ashley main event versus LAX in Brooklyn a few years ago. Man, that killed.
Thanks, Chris. Chris is one of those people who I think has been there since day one of me wrestling. He always used to go to like the WWR shows. He was around like Western Massachusetts wrestling. And so I do recognize him from those smaller shows. It's crazy. I didn't remember that he was there on the day that me and Ashley had to wrestle LAX, but that was a crazy match. Super thankful that we got to have that match. It definitely pushed us and elevated us to that next level.
With Chris, and that being said, what was it like the first time you walking out and actually seeing fans for you holding up signs and cheering for you? How did that make you feel?
Well, to be honest, I kind of like the amount of adrenaline you get from performing. I just blacked out. Like, not in a bad way, but like it was tunnel vision. Like I walked through the curtain and like everything you hear is just kind of like cloudy and you can't really make out any like distinguished face in the crowd. So for the first few times that I like went out and wrestled, that's what I experienced, was just like tunnel vision. I was just like, I'm just focused on what I have to do in the ring. And I didn't even, not that I didn't appreciate the fans, but it's just like, I couldn't because of how like nervous I was and how like much adrenaline I had in me. So after that, then I started having fun with the crowd. And then I like got to, whether I was like being a bad guy or a good guy, like then I had more fun with it.
Okay. What was
so where did you train in Rhode Island? Where was who trained you when you got bit by the bug, as Lewis said?
I trained in North Attleboro, so we would take the trip up from Providence all the way to North Attleboro twice a week to train in a barn. And we trained with this guy named Dynamite Doug Summers. He was only an indie wrestler, which I kind of am like more proud of now, just being trained on an independent level versus so many people coming out from like these academies and like all these like professional wrestling schools, because I just feel like I kept most of who I was during the process of training to be a wrestler. I didn't become like some character that I didn't want to be, or I didn't learn offense that I didn't want to have to learn. I just kind of got structured into who I would want to be versus who I thought I had to be. And I kind of now coming back out with 9 years and like seeing that, I'm just really happy at my development and how unique I've been able to become into the ring.
Yeah, and your versatility is really impressive too, because I guess as a fan, like I always think of you as a singles wrestler, but obviously I know you and Ashley as Team C Stars, you've been all over the place. Do you have a preference as to whether you wrestle tag matches or single matches?
I think if you asked me a year ago, I would have said tag matches because I always knew the better opportunities were with tag matches with me and Ashley. We, like with LAX, we got to have that match. That wouldn't have happened if I was just Delmi Exo in that year. No one was going to book that. No one was going to put money on that. But as a tag team, it made sense. And it was something people wanted to watch. Right now, I'm just fully focused on running as a singles wrestler. I feel like I did it back when I was, more green in the business. And so I didn't get to have like the bigger match opportunities. And so now that I've kind of gotten more into my own element, I just kind of want to like do my own singles run and just have every match possible out there.
What on the indie scene, who is the one person that you want to work with?
I did make a list. I did that thing that everyone does. They write out a list of people. So far, one of the people who I wanted to wrestle as a singles was Willow Nightingale, and I was able to do that at Grind. Jordan Blade, for sure. I want to wrestle her partner, Eel O'Neill. There's a couple other people. Mia Yim would be like a big one in my head. And yeah, right now I'm just trying to like knock off the people on my list. That's my goal this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing about Pro Wrestling Grind, which again we'll talk more about, obviously, but there's been so many really great matches, so it's not like I could say like one match in particular was my favorite. But I often think at a lot of promotions that sometimes the women's matches get sort of like lost in the shuffle. And I remember like your match with Willow was really incredible and action packed and hard hitting, and the dive. I mean, there's just so much crazy stuff going on. But Becca versus Davian really tore the house down too.
Yeah.
And that was the first Grind show. And that show really made such an impression with me. And for the reasons that we've talked about with Rip and just the look, I mean, like it's just the Pro Wrestling Grind show when you enter it is unique. It's not like it's just another pro wrestling venue. The look of it's totally different. But I would love to see it. I know you've faced her before, but if I could make requests, and since I've got you here, I can ask, I would love to see you in a rematch against Becca, because I think you guys fought in Limitless like a few years ago, right?
Yeah, during the road, we had 2 separate matches. And then I think the only other time that we wrestled was a tag. And then at WWR, we also wrestled over there. She is definitely one of the people who I would love to wrestle like a best of 7 series with, because there's just so much we could do together. Right now, she is just rehabbing after her shoulder injury. So we are going to wait to bring her back when she's fully recovered, and she will definitely be back at Grind.
Who
Awesome.
was your toughest opponent? I'm sorry, Jack. Who was your toughest opponent?
My toughest opponent was Rip Bison.
Oh, man.
Good answer. Good answer.
I would not want to be on the receiving end of one of those lariats.
I don't remember if I had to take a lariat. I don't think I... Oh, no, I took it on the floor. And then I went through the chairs with the cactus elbow. So toughest opponent, hands down, is Rip Bison.
Wow. Nice. Eric Hunting says Becca has come a long way in a short time. Indeed, she has. We won't argue with you there, Eric.
She is a... it's not like a once-in-a-lifetime person, but she is definitely like just a different animal when it comes to putting in work and seeing results. So if anyone feels like this sort of like how did she do it? She put in the work. So there's no secret.
Big time. That's a really great observation, because I think it's so obvious. You just can't fake the hard work she's done. So 100%. Marcy says, I thought it would have been Orange Cassidy or Swamp Monster. She saw that. Was that from Chikara? Saw that match.
Yeah, that was back within like my second year of wrestling. Me and Ashley had gotten some opportunity to work for Chikara. And that match, I do believe, I don't think it was that match, but I do remember Orange Cassidy did break Ashley's jaw in one of the matches.
Oh,
so that's probably her toughest opponent.
Wow.
Marcy knows her stuff. I tell you, Marcy's one of our listeners who just really knows her stuff.
Yeah.
She says Chikara 2016, Haverhill, Massachusetts.
See, my memory doesn't go back that far. It probably was. I remember.
Well, I was at a grind show. You just don't remember.
Oh no, it wasn't that far. We're still within our first year.
Look at who designs your ring gear? Is this something you came up with, or?
Right now, I like simple wrestling gear. I just think of like the 80s when it was like Roddy Piper just had like blue trunks and the maroon boots, and like you knew who that was. If you were to draw it with crayons, like you just knew who that was. And so that's something that I always like with wrestling gear. I don't want like complicated lines all over each other. I just feel like it looks too much on me personally. So right now I just design it. I just, fabric, one logo. That's it.
Okay. Theme music. Why do you use the theme music you use?
So the music I use right now is atmosphere, trying to find a balance. I wanted to do something that sounded very different than when I was doing Sea Stars or when I was doing One of the Boys as myself. And then I wanted to do something that wasn't going to be tied to Rip Bison and his character, just because we are so like closely related whenever we do shows now. Like we're always traveling together. And so if I picked metal, people were going to say it was his influence. If I picked something that was old fashioned or more rock based, people would say it was Ashley influenced. And so hip hop is the one thing that I have that they can't take from me. And I love that song. Yeah, I used to play Tony Hawk Pro Skater, and that was one of the songs that was in the game, the video game. And so I remember the lyrics when I was a kid, and I would always like rap it. It's very vulgar, but not in like an awful way. It's just vulgar in like a funny way. And so I like it.
Nice.
Jam.
I'm glad. I'm going to get to the listeners' questions in a second, but one of the I'm glad you said this, because one of the things that I find frustrating sometimes with women wrestlers who are associated with a male wrestler, especially in WWE, is it always just feels like what they're doing is the Diet Coke or whatever the guy is doing. They'd be like the same move. So, Daniel Bryanson or Bryan Danielson, sorry.
That guy.
And Brie Bella, I when she would do his moves, it would be cringy to me. I'm like, do your own thing, like I don't want to associate you with him. And I after you said that, it's funny because I've never once ever associated you with Rip in terms of your ring work. I've never thought that, and I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I even kind of poke fun at it sometimes because sometimes I do unintentionally steal what he does. And it's nothing like crazy. It's not like I'm going around lariating people. Like I would never. My arms are so tiny. But just unintentionally, like I think because we have the same like favorite style of wrestlings, like even past Japanese style wrestling, like it goes further. Sometimes we come up with the same offense, and I'll say it, and he'll be like, "No, I thought of that like in my own head before I told you," and it's kind of weird. But yeah, I try not to do something that would come across as like him.
Yeah, it's so great because I just feel like you're such a unique talent, and the fact that you have a singles and tag career, that it feels good to be inhibiting for you to be so closely tied to his moveset. So I think that's awesome. Marcy also chimed in and said she only went to a few Chikara shows, and that was one. Yeah, I went to a Chikara show in Connecticut, and Zenshi almost landed on me, which was fun. Eric Hunting says Delmi versus Megan Bain at Grind would be awesome.
Megan Bain is fantastic. Again, that's another one who, this is the problem with Grind, is we're so excited to work with all these women, and they got injured within like the same time frame. So we had the Becca injury, but Becca obviously going to be back. And then with Megan Bain, she said what her injury was. I know it's her knee, but she's going to be out for a few months, weeks. It's still up in the air how long she'll be out. But I got to wrestle her for Beyond's like uncharted territory last year, and she's a sweetheart to work with and wrestle. And so we were going to bring her in, and then her injury happened. So she will be in if she manages to be able to like come back within the year. Hopefully we can bring her in before this year is over. But if not, whenever she's ready and ring ready.
Two-part question. Who do you study? As the first one, like whose matches do you study? Whose matches do you go over? And the second part of that is not one of your own, but what is your favorite match of all time?
People I study, I think when I first started, I went back into like the basics. I was watching NWA, like old school wrestling. I really like the Mulkey brothers, just because they were just maniacs, the way they would like destroy their bodies. I wasn't good at wrestling when I started, so I did that. I took that from them. I was like, well, if I'm not good yet, I can just like kill myself and throw myself against the stairs. Maybe people will like me then. I studied them. Triple H, back in the Attitude Era, I love the different ways they did just like weird finishes where he still would win the belt. That's one of my favorite things. Triple H is one of my favorites. He just does like the most simplest things, and it just makes sense. I recently just watched WrestleMania, which I'm sure a lot of people have. I don't know if you heard of the show. WrestleMania. It's kind of a big deal.
When did that happen?
And The Miz is just so incredible. His like character, his like facial work, the small little details he places in. I asked Rip Bison, I was like, I want to work The Miz. He says, best I can do is. And so we're going to have me wrestle someone who's like The Miz at the next Grind show, but not The Miz.
All right, Jack,
so.
Suit up. You'll be awesome. All right, so second part of that question, what is your favorite match of all time?
Favorite match of all time is main event of WrestleMania 20. I cry every time. I cry every time that I watch it. And then for a second favorite match would probably be Trish and Lita from the main event of Monday Night Raw.
Okay.
Ooh,
good.
Yeah. Oh, that
answer.
Wow.
That's like that is an answer I've never heard before. That's like, wow, blew me away with that one. Jack, take over, sir.
Well, I was thinking about you. We were going to have you on tonight, and I was watching AEW Dark last night, and Serena Deeb fought Danny Moe, and I just thought both of them would be awesome against you. And I think Danny hasn't really had a chance to showcase what she does so well on AEW yet. But I just thought, I don't think you've ever wrestled either of them, have you?
No, I have not. Actually, Serena was gone during the period that I entered into Shimmer, so we didn't cross paths at all. I think I did run into her when I did extra work for AEW, but it wasn't anything like substantial. I didn't get to like sit down and talk to her. It was just kind of like a pass by, like, oh, hello, nice to meet you. But she's definitely one of those people who she's been around wrestling for so long. She saw like the worst of it into now what it's become for women, and like the better opportunities that they get, the amount of respect that they get now. And so I'm glad she gets to experience that with us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned WrestleMania, and before we moved on from that, how was your WrestleMania weekend? Because I know you guys had some traveling involved.
Yeah, I didn't want to go down for WrestleMania weekend just because it is very hectic. It's a very hectic schedule to follow, and I felt like I wasn't ready to jump into that like tour of it. Last time me and Ashley went down for the collective kind of thing, it was up in Indiana, and that felt overwhelming. Like the schedule of it, I just felt like this is a lot of wrestling at once. Um, I kind of want to hold off until I feel like it matters more for when I'm on the collective. Like I want it to feel like earned almost instead of me going down and getting like a scramble spot. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just feel like it wouldn't feel as big of a deal to me. We went down to Texas. Well, we went to Houston, and it happened to be the same weekend of WrestleMania weekend. We entered a deadlift competition, and it was for charity. So it was just all fun, but it was cool to be able to test yourself and put up some weight. So that's what we did.
Nice.
How much did you lift?
I pulled 275. That was my last big deadlift.
Wow.
Rip pulled
She
500.
actually lift more than you.
It's true. It's true. I'm not going to get into a lifting contest with either of these guys.
Yeah, wow.
Right,
that's embarrassing, Jack.
All right, I'm going to have to get back into my lifting. My failed training days are behind me,
That's like really bad that she could outlift you.
What are you talking about? You're insulting Delmi. She's going to kick your ass if you show up.
No, I'm gonna offer her a contract because like now you just said you wanted her to wrestle Danny. That's going to be a conflict of interest with me because I do manage Danny and I got her to match against Serena. So now how am I going to manage Delmi if I can't? How's that going to happen, Jack?
You're like the Paul Heyman of the Indies. I don't know.
That's right. That's right. Look at VSK got him a belt. I offered my services to Rip, and we're still negotiating. But now look.
Alec Price.
Yeah, that's right. Alec, he got a championship. Look at that. And now you're just jumping on my Kool-Aid here. So of course I got to embarrass you. Keep going with the questions. We got more questions. Do we have any more? No. Keep going. Come on.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I feel like when I hear you speak, it reminds me of artists who work in any medium. Like it seems like you're very critical of your work. You seem very humble. But really, if you look at what you've done, it's always interesting to me to see like I feel like you've been everywhere. So all the companies I've watched, I feel like you've been there at some point because you got, like you mentioned, Shimmer, Limitless, which of course the road was just really cool, and I loved watching that every week. Beyond, which again, the Northeast is so littered with amazing promotions. You've been there, AEW, MLW, all over the place. And it made me think like, how much different is it working for all these different companies? Because I think about how, even in comics, like, I've done work for all these companies, as Marvel and DC and Disney and blah, blah, blah. And they're all different. Sometimes even the way you deliver your work or the deadlines or the people you deal with. Like for you, how different is it when you're going to do work for, say, Limitless versus AEW?
Very different. For something that's like a TV thing where you're coming in as an extra, you basically have no say. You have no like creative say. You are there to be put into a spot, and like they already have the outline. So in that sense, it's kind of not as fun. It always feels like you have to kind of present it as like a bigger deal. Like everyone, whenever they do their dark matches, they kind of like make their post the next morning and they're like, so happy, like I was under the bright lights. But for me, I kind of just, if I do that, if I'm like, the bright lights are on, I'm just like, well, yeah, but I want to wrestle the matches that I like wrestling. So for me, I like Limitless because Randy's pretty great. He always has like something that he wants to build. So when we were wrestling the Prestigious, it was kind of cool because there was a story there and we had the John Alba thing. And then at the end, when it was like the 4-on-4 and we finally held John Alba and Davey came in with the big kick, it felt cool because like the crowd was reacting to something that we told throughout the months. I guess that's just how I feel. Like sometimes bigger opportunities don't feel as big as they should be just because it's such a small amount of time that you're wrestling in the ring, and it's just as soon as you enter, it's almost like you're leaving already. So you don't really get to soak it in. Especially as like a female, you get less time on these bigger stages too. When you're just the first person coming in and you're not like one of their signed talent, you know? So I guess maybe in a few years, if I am signed to a contract and I do have like the big match under the big lights, it'll feel different. But for now, I feel like I've only gotten taste of what it's like to wrestle for someplace.
What was
Yeah, I just think it's impressive that it's such a wide variety of companies, you know, because I feel like there's such a different vibe, you know, just from a fan perspective, watching MLW, for instance, you know,
Yeah.
whether televised or whatever. To me, like just the vibe of the show is so much different than Limitless, than AEW, than Ring of Honor, than Impact, you know, all of them. You know, again, from a fan perspective, it just is. I always think about like, what's it like? Like, what time do you have to show up? And like, how do you find out who you're wrestling? And like, I love like the inner workings of it. And a lot of that's probably boring for you to talk about, but like, there's a lot of travel involved too.
There is, yeah. The different travel schedules is definitely like stressful because you kind of like end up with brain soup and you're like, I thought this place, you're supposed to do this for it. And so it feels like you're filling out like medical paperwork forever. I remember when I had to go in for Ring of Honor, I had to do a separate set of tests for like just like your regular heart rate and things like that. And that was just overwhelming. It was like, oh my God, please don't fail. Like I have no reason to ever fail a medical test. But whenever it's official and they give you paperwork, you suddenly feel like, oh my God, they're going to find something wrong with me.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's got to be stressful. And, you know, we talk about that a lot too, about the mental strength that it takes to do what you do, because the physical strength's obvious. You know, when you see, you know, you getting hit in the face, like that hurts, like that's tough. We know that. But the mental part of like what you're saying, so you show up at Ring of Honor at 2 p.m., like, oh shit, like I got to do A, B, and C before I can figure out what I'm going to do that I'm passionate about, which is get in the ring.
Yeah, basically. It's like, they're not hurdles because it's not hard. It's nothing like that's too difficult, but it's just like little checklists that your mind has to complete before you can even begin to get anxious about wrestling.
Right. Do you have a pre-match or a pre-card ritual that you do? Besides filling out the paperwork and doing what you have to do, finding out who you're working with, is there something that you like to do to make the universe in line?
No, because I think it's because I came from New England, and it was very much like, I don't want to say bully territory, but it was very much like mocked if you did something like super hokey, like if you like overhyped yourself before your match, because people would just look at you and they'd poke fun at you like, oh, are you nervous, or like something like that. So I always like would lie and be like, no, like I'm fine, like I'm playing cool, and I would never like do something like listen to music or like stay in my own corner because I felt like I couldn't because I was gonna get laughed at. So now at this point, I don't have anything. I make sure like my knee pads are up. I pee one last time. That's it. Like,
I knew that was coming. That always comes up. I knew it was coming.
I don't have anything special because I never got to. I was gonna get made fun of.
All right.
So
what?
Well, sir, go ahead, Rose. You're stepping on me as usual.
What was the best advice that you were given, and what was the best advice that you have gave?
Don't suck.
My God, how many times have we heard that? Yes, for sure. Now, was that both? You did that both? Really?
That's a New England thing. That's a New England thing.
Yes,
you're about
it is.
to go off the curtain and you're already nervous, and then they go up to you and they're like, hey, don't suck. Thanks.
Who gave you that advice?
I think Rip was the first person to tell me that.
Okay, and who did you give that to?
I just kind of say it for fun to people. I don't say it to anyone who's not ready to hear it, but I'll say it to like DBN, because she's fine going out through the curtain, but I'll be like, hey, don't suck. But yeah.
Go ahead, Jack.
Thank you, Lewis. So what's the furthest you've had to travel? Because we've seen you all over the place, but have you, what's like, say, for instance, the longest drive that you've had to endure to get to a show?
Furthest I've flown was Japan. I took 2 planes there. I went to Istanbul and then I went to Japan. That was the longest travel day. And then the longest drive, I don't know if it was New Orleans or if it was Texas. That was the longest drive. It was me, Perry Von Vicious, Rip Bison, Johnny Torres, and Dr. Cube. I don't know if I'm allowed to say his identity.
That's a lovely crew. Wow.
But Dr. Cube was with us. And we had to pick up everyone. So I went the furthest. I went to Western Massachusetts, picked up Rip and Perry. We went to Connecticut, picked up Johnny Torres, went to New York, picked up Dr. Cube and a couple things for Kaiju. Then we went all the way down to New Orleans for WrestleMania weekend when they were in New Orleans. And so I think that was only my second WrestleMania weekend. And I just did Kaiju. We had 2 different shows. That's when they did the sexy police officers. I don't know if anyone remembers that. And they did this really cool spot where like Burger Bear got bladed and he started spewing ketchup from the top of his because they banned blood that WrestleMania in New Orleans. Something about the commissioner in New Orleans. You're not allowed to bleed. So they did that.
You just mentioned Istanbul and Japan. How hard was it to find something that you could keep down being from New England and that over there in those countries?
In Istanbul, I didn't eat anything because currency, like I didn't understand. And I think everything was also like shut off in like the food areas. So I just ate whatever like snacks I brought for the ride. Okay. Japan, I actually grew up eating so many different foods. My parents would always just like force me to eat things. I wasn't like a really picky eater as a kid. I like tried like Nigerian food, Chinese food, Japanese food, pretty much everything. They were just like, this is what you're eating. If you don't eat it, you don't eat today. So like my parents were very into like takeout. Like once a week we got takeout. I'm surprised I'm not like morbidly obese because my mom was also like an insomniac and sometimes she would just take us to Wendy's and it's like, Mom, it's a school night. Like I can't I should be in bed by now.
I was like, you're the first person that I've ever met that went to Istanbul. I was like, that's really cool.
I was just in the airport. It was just like a layover, so not real.
But still, it's still cool.
Thanks, cool. I appreciate
it. Johnny Torres is an awesome commentator. Did I read that right?
You did.
He is. Yeah, right? He's great.
He
makes the show.
Far away.
Lewis, if you ever make it to a pro wrestling grind show, you might see him there.
I promised. Yeah. Okay. I will be there on Friday, April 29th.
Right.
In Western Massachusetts. I will be there. Stop by. Jack Purcell will have a table there. I will be there with the Faces and Heels podcast. I will be there. I will see Delmi. I will see Rip. I will be there. Okay.
Yeah, you even have some other friends there. Logan Black's going to be there. We got a nice lineup shaping up.
I will see Logan Black. Yes, I will.
So we got to talk about Pro Wrestling Grind. I mean, Lewis didn't have the class to wear the shirt today, but luckily someone did.
I don't have one. I don't have one.
All right.
All right.
Calm down over there. We're going to get you one. But so Pro Wrestling Grind's really exciting. Like the Northeast, we always talk about is just an embarrassment of riches of amazing promotions. And now Pro Wrestling Grind has made what I consider to be a big impact because I've been to a lot of different companies. And when I walked in the first time and saw that ring and the entrance, it was awesome. So we've talked to Rip a little bit about this, but can you tell us a little bit about the origin of Pro Wrestling Grind?
Yeah. I mean, as I've kind of like mentioned, like I've been on the road with Rip forever. Like he was always the person who, like, if I wasn't writing with Ashley, I was writing to a show with him. And because we saw so many different shows, we were just like, we would pick things that we liked, and then we would pick things that we didn't like. One of the things that we didn't like at shows was waiting for pay. So with Grind, as soon as the talent enters, they get their envelope. Like that was one thing for sure that as a wrestler, we were like, that's gotta stop. Like, why don't you have the money counted already? Like, how long does it take to count money? But for things like that, like we would just like get things, and it wasn't like we wanted to run a show together. It was more like, oh, if I ran a company, it would be like this. Like, oh, I would do this for my company. And like you grew up watching it, so you always played promoter, like with your little action figures. You know, you would make the show, make a little card, and then be like, all right, Rey Mysterio's gonna face Batista tonight for the main event, and blah, blah, blah. Or you would do it on the video game as a kid. Like you had that half part of your brain already there. I think the problem with me and Rip is that we're very overly ambitious people. And so
that's not a problem at all.
It could be to some people, to some extent, but we could have just ran a pro wrestling show. You know, we could have just rented a ring, rented a venue, booked some of our friends. Our problem is that we were like, it's gotta be really cool. So we bought the canvas, we bought he bought the company name, and he bought the logo like before we even had anything. He was like, well, I bought the logo, so now we have to run a show. And we just kept adding to it. We're like, he was like, well, what if we get lights that like blink with the music? And I was like, do they even make that? Like, they don't make that. And so we just kept adding to it. And so finally, like when we had to run the first show, we didn't realize how much of a wow factor it was until we set up everything in the venue. We're like, this looks so cool. Like, we overdid it. Unintentionally overdid it.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, even the guardrails, like I think I was saying this to Rip. I don't know if it was on the podcast or not when we were talking, but those guardrails are like the sturdiest guardrails I've ever seen in my life. Like those things have taken a pounding at every show, and they always look brand new.
They're expensive. Probably could have not done with the guardrails. I was against the guardrails, but now that they're there, I'm like, guardrails, they earn their pay every day, every show.
Yeah. Oh my God, those things take a hammering at every show. Eric is back and he says, well, you succeeded. It's a really cool show to go to.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Eric has been going to all the Grind shows so far. It's really great to like start memorizing some of the fans that come to our shows. It's kind of cool, like getting to be familiar with these people now.
Yeah, like Lewis. Oh, I mean, not like me, right?
Like Jack Purcell, that guy's really slick.
That guy's reliable, man.
He's always standing in the back, you know, just fist pumping.
I will be there.
Everett was mad at me at one show for taking pictures of her. She yelled at me.
April 29th, I will be there. That's right. Lewis Perry from the Angrygeeks and Faces and Heels podcast will be at the Wrestling Grind Show on April 29th.
There you go.
And can I just say one of my favorite moments? And it's funny because there's been so many wrestling shows I've been to where something like this happens. But at the last show, there was a moment where you can always tell the fans who've never been to one, like this is their first experience, which I think is so cool. It appeared obvious to me that they're these two young women. Their first live pro wrestling show was The Grind. And they were front row, and there was a dive that happened. And they screamed. I don't know if you heard. It was like this like life or death scream, like a piercing scream, as though this guy was going to miss and land in their lap. I was like, oh my God, I love when it's somebody's first show and they think somebody's going to land on their lap.
Yeah, we keep getting some people who it's their first show and they're like, I've never seen this. Like, I don't even understand what's happening, but it's awesome. And I'm like, good, I hope you keep coming.
Yeah, I talked to a couple of people. It was their first show too. And it was really fun to see their reactions because they were totally wowed. Like they just couldn't believe how hard hitting a lot of the matches were. I mean, like Jay Freddy and obviously Rip and a lot of the other guys who were there constantly were hitting so hard. I mean, this woman was like holding her chest like she felt it.
I do want to put out a disclaimer. We don't ask anyone to hit harder on grind shows. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about the air and the Pulaski Club, but they get there and they're hitting harder than they do on other shows. It's incredible. I'm so thankful to all the wrestlers who come up and show out.
Yeah. I mean, it is always awesome. I mean, there's been so many people who are like some of my favorite people on the scene. Like, I mean, you guys have had Alec Price, Warhorse. I mean, O'Shea Edwards was there recently. I mean, just so many awesome talents that you guys are bringing from all over. Merck was there. Just awesome. You know, and it's not just like the same guys who tour the circuit in New England. It's a combination of everything, which I think is unique as well. Eric says, our first show ever, we had Bobby Ocean land on our laps.
Eric, that's hard-hitting Bobby Ocean.
That's
one
right.
Of my clients, good friend of mine, one of my clients, that's hard-hitting Bobby Ocean.
You know what else I think is hard-hitting? And again, Delmi, you could certainly tell us, because all I'm doing is a fan speculating. But again, I wonder what this is like for you, because I know you've wrestled for so many companies, but that Pro Wrestling Grind ring seems really hard. Like
She's laughing. Why are you laughing?
Because JD Drake said our ring doesn't bump because he decided to miss a moonsault and a Vader bomb. It is a newer ring. So because it's a newer ring, the metal is very just like there. It's not warped yet. If you see other rings like the Beyond ring, so nice to bump in because the metal has finally, it was also a new ring, but it's finally started to like warp a little. All the pieces kind of just slide right in together. A newer ring, the spring is like, it's a giant car spring. So it doesn't.
Spring. It's very taut.
Yeah, it's you know, it's got to just break in a little bit. But
it's
You guys are working it out.
I think it bumps fine. I was one of the first people to bump
16
in it.
Correct? I'm just judging by
18
pictures.
by 18.
18 by 18.
Yeah, see, we overdid it. We could have gone to 60 bits.
Again, because I haven't been there yet, I'm just judging by pictures from Jack. That was 16 by 16. Okay.
Yeah, when you see it in person, you'll be able to tell. But I mean, I always feel like as a fan, like, oh my God, like that just looks so painful. Not that it's not painful in every ring, but just in the middle sometimes when you see a lot of guys hit in the middle, you know, that you can see there's a little give there. But JD Drake, I remember exactly what you're talking about. When he hit, I was like, oh my God, man. Like that was really, really brutal. And I think the vibe of that show, like the crowd is always hot.
Yeah, they are a very hot crowd. There's a lot of shows where like the crowd ends up getting tired out throughout the night, but this crowd, they just love violence, or I don't know. They just love the environment that it is. And so I'm also very thankful for the crowd. Super polite. Before I was able to be in the wrestling ring, I would stay out to make sure there was no like wrong verbiage going around. And I would just like keep my ears open, do laps, and just, you know, you're nervous. You've never performed wrestling as it is nowadays. How open it is with like LGBT community, with how open it is with women. You get nervous that they're going to say the wrong things. And so you just want to like be present, but we have not had any problems really with anyone saying anything inappropriate, or being aggressive towards anyone. So I'm really thankful that East Hampton is such a open-minded place.
Yeah. Good call. Eric says, do you charge Logan Black for the chairs he destroys? LOL.
No, we're going to start getting some Walmart chairs and putting them under the ring just in case he decides to go crazy. Because...
You would think after he had his child, he would have calmed down, but no, not at all.
It made him worse.
I think so too. I do. I think so too.
You know, one thing I always think about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if she has any merch and if she would like to talk about that, because usually we run out of time. But if she has any merch, where could our listeners and our viewers on Greenfield and South Hadley Public Access TV would like to get a T-shirt of Delmi and wear it around town, where they can get it before we run out of time?
They can get merch at Pro Wrestling Grind on April 29th in East Hampton, Massachusetts.
Where I'm gonna be finally.
We'll be looking
Okay.
for you, Lewis. We'll be looking.
Dude, you're taking me out to dinner before we go. Yeah. So how about that?
Okay, all right. Just to
I
make sure,
will
man,
be
if
there.
I got to offer you a cheeseburger for your ass to show up, I'll do it.
I promise I will be there. I just gave her my word. I will be there.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, here's another thing I just want to make sure I mention is I think this is so cool and something that, again, it's not like, to me, I've been to a lot of different shows where I kind of can't remember which company was which. Like the shows are very clear when they're booked. It's like, okay, well, this match is obviously the main event, and then you got some undercard matches. But with Pro Wrestling Grind, I found like one of the things that I really enjoy about it is you have no idea what the match order is going to be ever. And I think that some of the biggest bangers on the shows so far, and we're 5 in now, have been the opening matches. And so you can't show up late, because if you do, you might miss out.
Yeah. We have been gauging. So the beauty of not live streaming a show is that all the pre-sales, we try to make sure a majority of them are seated before we start now. Because when we had Warhorse versus Rip Bison as the opener, and we knew that, but people who were showing up didn't know that. They were probably trying to find parking. You know, there's just little things that you could be like 5 minutes late to something. So we did push it back, and that was great because we were able to fit in all the pre-sale people to be able to sit down. It is kind of one of those things, like, you have to be there for the whole show because you could miss out. I remember some women came in and they were like, did the women wrestle already? And I was like, yeah, they were on earlier. And so, you know, there's something you probably wanted to see. And I don't think we meant to not release the match order or not release who is main event. But now that it's kind of working, we're going to run with it for as long as we can until, you know, there's like obviously like the main title picture or something like that to be announced as the main event. But for now, this is what works. And I'm glad that everyone is like enthralled throughout the entire card.
Yeah, it's working. And it's funny because Eric stole my next question, and you kind of alluded to it as well, because it seems clear that there's been a focus on noting the people who are undefeated so far, almost as though maybe they'll be leading towards some match for a championship of some kind. And Eric Hunting asks, will you be crowning a champion anytime soon?
We are currently working on getting something for the, what would be like,
Maybe I'll come out of retirement. I don't know.
We're currently working on
She's laughing again. Why are you laughing again? My God. I'm sorry.
We're currently working on like making the title for what would be like the main champion of Grind. It's already in the works, and hopefully we can start building towards that more within this year. Hopefully before the end of the year, we'll have someone crowned as the Grind champion. I know the name and I don't want to slip it up because it's going to be a big reveal. But I almost said it.
The other thing I was going to ask you, and again, I totally understand it. You may not be at liberty or just not want to say, but at the Grind, are you thinking that there'll be one championship and it will be, the gender won't matter? Whoever is the champion, man, woman, whatever?
So,
Jack, you put her on the spot.
Well, it's an
Tell
interesting
us.
question.
well, it
Tell
is
us.
actually going to be kind of interesting because this next show, we are going to be bleeding in the division. So far we have had the women wrestle with the women and the men wrestle with the men. We are now feeling like, because East Hampton has been so open, it is safe for us to bleed into intergender wrestling. We won't be announcing it as intergender wrestling. It's just going to be one of those things that this is a match that's happening, and hopefully it goes over well with the local crowd and we can do more of that. Again, this is a new crowd to wrestling. We didn't want to rush into that and make them feel uncomfortable with it. But if you give them to people who like they know are professionals, hopefully they respond well to it, and hopefully we can do more of that in the future. I personally love intergender wrestling, or just mixed gender wrestling. I think it's great for people to work with whatever talent they want. I would have never had the match with LAX if, Kimberly didn't take the Pazuzu bomb early on in her career. So it's great. It lets you work with different talent and get better opportunities, so fingers crossed that goes over well. And the idea right now is that would just be the heavyweight champion.
Gotcha.
So no gender, but that would be the Haas man title.
Ah, interesting. Wow, it's really exciting. I mean, it's kind of a cool thing. It must be for you a really cool time to have this, almost like this child growing, you've got all these developments happening, and it's it could go anywhere. I mean, you're in control.
Yeah, it's like walking right now. It's pretty cool.
Just what you said. I mean, you have a sense of what your audience is, and what they may be accepting of. And I think that's so cool because, again, I just been to a lot of wrestling shows where I felt like they were fine, but there was no personality to it. It felt like just a good generic indie show, and that's fine. But the grind's not that. And I just think that's exciting.
Yeah. I don't know. Everything kind of just fell together really nicely. We have a great team. We have great people behind the cameras. We have great people who show up and help us set up everything. The commentators are great, from even the sound. A lot of it is just in-house friends that we've known in wrestling for so long. And so putting a show together as a brand kind of feels like everyone puts in their best step forward, because we grew up loving this business and we grew up loving wrestling. So, why not make it the best possible version that we can?
Yeah, absolutely. Eric says Grind has an energy all its own.
It does. And again, I can't take credit for all of it. A lot of people work hard to make Grind happen. And between me and Rip, we're so thankful for everyone who helps us out with setting up, running the show on the day of, and then tearing down. Tearing down's the worst part. So thank you to everyone who helps put something away.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to step out of line and ask questions that you don't want to answer, but one thing that I've really enjoyed is that I can watch the shows again on IWTV, but I haven't seen the last show there. Is it up on IWTV? Can fans see all of the Grind shows now?
It will be up soon, with WrestleMania weekend being right after. We didn't want it to get lost in the shuffle, so we held off on it. It's going to be edited and finished pretty soon, and we'll make an announcement when that is ready to be uploaded. We are also going to start posting some matches onto a YouTube channel, so that people who probably haven't gotten a chance to see some of the matches will be able to. We're definitely going to have the first ever Grind match as the first YouTube match up there. Kevin Koo versus Matt Mikowski. So be on the lookout for that when it hits YouTube.
That's fantastic. I feel like it's really fun with all the themes you guys do. And again, no surprise being the visual guy here, but I love the antisocial promotions you guys are doing where, it's like Logan Black is antisocial, Rip Bison is antisocial. Yeah, it's really fun. And I think Travis Huckabee's coming back for the next show. Am I wrong about that? I think.
No, yeah, he'll be back.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys have this heavy hitting lineup now where people kind of have an expectation of what they're going to be seeing. And are you going to be announcing any of the specific matches before? I mean, we're coming up on 3 weeks away?
Yeah, we had a little more extra time since the March date was a little bit further into, or in the middle of the month of March. The match announcements, we'll probably have the first match announcement on Thursday, and then they will be flying in right after that.
That's great. So I want to make sure everybody knows where they can find the information, because you guys are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and maybe there's other locations you can let our listeners know about.
Nope, those are perfect. Twitter and Instagram are the exact same thing. They are at Grind Puro. That is Puro. And then if you want to follow our Facebook, I believe you can just type out Pro Wrestling Grind, or the username itself also, which I don't know how that works on Facebook, but it's also at Grind Puro, Puro.
And I love the shirt and the colors you guys chose, by the way, like super cool. The identity is awesome. So the branding is very cool.
Yeah, it's very heavily based off of like Pro Wrestling Noah. That was one of like the biggest inspirations, obviously with like the green border on the canvas and like the green.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal. And, you know, again, we really thank you for being with us tonight, because we're just about out of time. And I hope, Louis, you got all your questions in.
I did. Once again, I was very well behaved. I was captivated. Delmi, thank you very much. And for those of you that want to join me and hang out at Wrestling Grind on the 29th, go here, get a ticket right now, April 29th. That is your link. That's your link to get tickets. Head out there. Come hang out with the original Angry Geek, Louis Perry. Hang out with the Faces and Heels podcast. Jack and I watch some great show of some professional wrestling right here. And Marcy, are you going to be there? You got to be there. Everyone watching right now, come and hang out with Jack and I and watch some great wrestling. Meet Delmi, buy one of her t-shirts, meet Rip, meet Logan Black. I mean, it's going to be a great show, and I feel bad for missing them all the time. Jack, finish it up, please.
Well, I just want to say this would be exciting if Marcy and Louis make their Pro Wrestling Grind debuts on the same night. That would be awesome.
They gotta be antisocial.
Oh, Louis may just be that. I mean, it could be worse. But if you have a second after we sign off, I just wanted to say a quick goodbye to you before we end this all. But we just want to make sure we remind people that we do have a few guests coming up. Watch our social media, because you'll be seeing a couple announcements that'll be really fun. So it's Faces and Heels on Facebook, Faces and Heels podcast on Instagram. We're kind of silently creeping around on Twitter. I think we're Faces and Heels podcast over there. And I'm Jack Purcell Inc. INK on Instagram and on Facebook. And I'm also weirdly lingering on Twitter, Jack Purcell 38, not sure why. And then if you're interested in supporting the arts, I just had a birthday. So all you people who haven't been to patreon.com, you go to patreon.com, you can see all of my artwork in their entirety. I don't really post all of my full images anymore. There's a really cool Rip Bison piece. There might even be a Delmi Exo piece on the way. Who knows? But that's where you're going to see the very first glimpse of everything I do and progress shots. So please, if you're into supporting the arts, check me out at just look up Jack Purcell, patreon.com. And then we got this well-behaved gentleman over here.
I am Louis Perry. You guys know me. You can see me every Monday night with my sister from another mister, the one and only, that Wonder Woman, Jamie Dolan, on the Angry Geek Show. Every Tuesday night with my brother, like no other, the tag team partner from the ink-slinging Jack Purcell, that cat right there from Marvel and DC Comics. And you can find me on Friday night, April 29th, at Wrestling Grind. Yeah, seriously, come and check these guys out. I've been missing it, only because of unfortunate events is keeping me away. Come and find them. We want to thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. I'm getting tongue-tied here. Delmi, thank you very much. Get your tickets now. It's going to be a banger. It's going to be a blast. I'm Louis. That's Jack. That's Delmi.
I'm
Pro
Delmi.
Wrestling Grind. Come have some fun. See ya. Be safe, San Diego.
This has been an Earplug Podcast presentation. Found on earplugpodcast.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and wherever your favorite podcasts are found.